You leave your car in a 70-degree parking lot. Comfortable weather. Mild, the kind of day where you leave the windows up and don't think about it. So, what is the temperature inside when you come back an hour later? 116 degrees. A Stanford team measured this on a 72-degree day and published it in the journal Pediatrics. That number is real. Most people's instinct is that a car on a mild day gets a little warm. Maybe 80-something. The reasoning seems sound. The outside air is 70, so how much hotter could it get inside a metal box? That reasoning is completely wrong, and the reason it is wrong is interesting. Sunlight is shortwave radiation. It passes through glass almost without resistance. The seats, dashboard, and steering wheel absorb that energy and re-emit it as infrared. Long-wave heat. Glass blocks infrared from escaping. So energy pours in, piles up, and cannot leave. People call this the greenhouse effect, which is worth a quick detour. Real greenhouses trap heat by blocking airflow. Warm air stays inside because it cannot convect away. What happens in the car is closer to what CO2 does in the atmosphere. Radiation gets in, the outgoing wave gets blocked. Not identical. Close enough that the name stuck. Back to the parking lot. What makes this dangerous is not the peak temperature. It is the speed. 10 minutes gets you 19 degrees hotter. The car does not need an afternoon. It needs a grocery run. The air temperature inside tops out around 116. The dashboard can hit 160. Hot enough to cause a burn on contact. The steering wheel, if it is leather, can reach 150. Those surfaces are absorbing direct sunlight that the air is only benefiting from secondhand. You have probably, at some point, cracked the window to help. It does help. By 2 to 4 degrees. That is not a guess, it was measured. 2 to 4 degrees on a 116-degree interior. I find that both clarifying and bleak. Every summer, children and dogs die in cars on days nobody would call hot. 70 degrees is March in most of the country. People hear hot car death and picture August in Phoenix. I think that mental image is the single most dangerous thing about this whole subject. The car does not care about the calendar. It cares about sunlight. So, 70 degrees outside. 1 hour. The inside reaches 116. The outside temperature barely matters. It is the floor, not the ceiling. Your car is a glass box aimed at the sun with no way to exhale. Put something alive in that box and walk away, and what you called a comfortable afternoon will kill it. The answer: most people reach for a shade. Park under a tree, find a covered garage, block the direct sun. And shade does work. On a clear day, it cuts the peak cabin temperature by roughly 15 to 20 degrees. 15 off 116 is still 101. There is a whole product category built on the same logic. The accordion sunshade you fold behind your windshield. They have been sold since the 1980s, and they genuinely work at protecting the dashboard. Surface temperatures behind a good reflective shade can drop by 40 or 50 degrees. The plastic survives. The steering wheel stays touchable. The cabin air ignores all of that. A car with a sunshade, a shaded spot, and a cracked window on a 70-degree day still climbs to around 108 inside. You have protected the vehicle. The vehicle is grateful. One thing reliably works, and it is the obvious one: run the air conditioner. An idling car with the AC on holds comfortable temperature in any heat. That is technically the answer. It is also beside the point, because the scenario is a car with nobody in it. Every summer in the United States, somewhere between 30 and 50 children die in hot cars. Researchers have tracked that figure for roughly 2 decades. And the number has not meaningfully moved. 2 decades of awareness campaigns. Warning labels printed on car seats. News cycles every August that run like calendar events. The count stays roughly where it was. That is the thing nobody puts in the headline. Because the story people picture, an inattentive parent, a phone, someone who did not care, does not match what researchers found when they reviewed decades of documented cases. Most of the time, the parent genuinely did not know the child was in the car. Not forgot for a minute. Did not know. Dogs face the same physics. They die in parked cars every summer in numbers that are almost certainly undercounted. Most states have no reporting requirement, and most deaths go unwitnessed. Smaller body mass means the timeline is faster. The temperature curve is identical. Memory researchers had a name for this kind of failure long before anyone connected it to parked cars. It explains, with uncomfortable precision, how a devoted parent, not a careless one, walks away from a car and does not come back. The brain science behind it is not complicated. It is just not what anyone expected. The researcher was David Diamond, a neuroscience professor at the University of South Florida. He was the first to systematically study why this kept happening to people who clearly loved their children. What he found contradicted almost everything the public assumed. Prospective memory is the kind of memory that carries an intention forward in time. You use it when you tell yourself to pick up milk on the way home. It works differently from the memory that recalls a face or a name, and it fails differently, especially when your routine gets interrupted. Routine is the mechanism. Every morning you drive the same route, child to daycare, then to work. That sequence becomes automated. The basal ganglia, your brain's habit circuit, takes over. On the morning the plan changed, you were supposed to break the chain first. You didn't. The parent parked. The child was still in the back seat. Diamond went back through the case records. The parents were not who you picture when you hear this story. A pediatrician. A social worker who had trained other parents in child safety. A NASA engineer. The profile that campaigns relied on: the neglectful parent, the phone, someone who didn't care, didn't appear in the data. In 2009, Gene Weingarten spent 2 years reporting on this for the Washington Post. He interviewed the families, the investigators, the prosecutors who had charged some of the parents with crimes. The piece is called Fatal Distraction. It won the Pulitzer Prize. What it argued, methodically, is that this is not a story about bad people. That turned out to be politically difficult to act on. A tragedy with a clear villain is easy to legislate against. A tragedy that implicates the habit circuitry of any ordinary human brain, including yours, is much harder to campaign away with a billboard. Always the wrong tool. Japan mandated rear seat occupant detection in new vehicles before the United States did. Several European countries went further. The American auto industry spent years arguing that the solution was parental vigilance, not hardware, that adding a chime to the car would, somehow, be admitting something. Congress passed a law in 2021 requiring the federal government to mandate this technology in new vehicles. The rulemaking dragged past its own deadline. The technology had existed for over a decade. The per-vehicle cost, by most estimates, ran to tens of dollars. The rule still has not been finalized. NHTSA missed its own statutory deadline. Rear seat detection sensors already exist in vehicles you can buy today. They work, they are not expensive, and they are ready, but nothing requires them. A law mandating a mandate is not a mandate. Here is what gets me. This is not a mystery. The physics is documented, the psychology is documented, and the technology that breaks the routine exists. The death toll has barely moved in 20 years. So step back to the question you started with. The mild spring day. The errand that takes 10 minutes. 70 degrees outside. Inside a locked car, in about an hour, it hits 113. The first 10 minutes alone push it 19 degrees up. A child's core temperature reaches heat stroke well before that plateau. Routine is the mechanism. It always was. Hot enough that a child cannot call for help before losing consciousness. The car does not announce itself. It just gets quiet. You asked about 70 degrees because 70 sounds like nothing. The assumption buried in the question is that outside and inside track each other. They do not, and they never have. Physics is not the problem. The detector that prevents this is built and available. The law requiring it passed in 2021. What is missing is a finalized rule, and that means the honest answer to your mild day question is still a cause of death. Roughly 3 dozen children die this way in the United States every year. That number has not moved in a decade. The law is passed, the technology is built, and the rule is not finished. At some point that stops being an oversight. The question you walked in with had the answer buried in the framing. Mild is not the same as safe. Mild is just slow.